Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Like I said, I'm gonna literally do whatever I want on this channel. For context, I made a slideshow. 21 Pilots lore explanation. I made a slideshow about a month ago going over the entire lore of 21 Pilots. The entire Dema, Clancy, Trench, all of the lore. I wanted to make a video just going through the slideshow because I think it's actually a pretty good slideshow. Maybe it'll educate you, maybe you'll learn something new. So I'm a really big 21 Pilots fan. I've been a fan of them since I was 13 years old, which is kind of crazy to think about. I started listening to them in early 2016. I've been addicted ever since. It's I feel like there's been so many artists that have come and go that I've listened to and then I kind of grow out of, but this is the one artist, 21 Pilots is the one band that has kind of consistently always caught my attention, always been interesting, and every time they drop a new album it's the only thing that consumes my world for a little bit. So I'm very excited to talk about this, and I'm very knowledgeable about all of this, but I wouldn't say I'm the most knowledgeable person on the lore, but I would say that I have been following along with this since the beginning, so I do know quite a bit, and that's what we're going to go over today. This is a very, very basic introduction to the lore. You can go really, really deep with it if you want, but this is just going to be just the slideshow that I made for some friends that I wanted to show this to. All of the sources I'm going to have at the end of the slideshow. I'm going to have links to them all in the description of this video. Anyways, 21 Pilots lore explanation. Let's go. Okay, some ground rules. So I'm only going to be explaining the lore through the context of the songs and the music videos, mainly the music videos, because that's where you can really see the story being played out. There's only 9 music videos that are canon to the lore right now.
Hey, what's up? Okay, every time you see the screen, it's because editing Trev has come in to correct myself. But I just wanted to say there's actually 10 music videos. I just forgot to edit it because I made this slideshow before the contract came out, so there's 10 music videos now. Okay, anyways,
we're only going to be going over those. There's some more that have come out for the albums that are in the lore, but those ones we're not going to talk about because they're not canon. There's a lot of external stuff. There's a lot of Clancy letters or cryptic websites and just a lot of stuff that it can get a little confusing to really keep track of what's going on. But again, I'm really trying to explain this from a start to finish story narrative perspective, so I'm only going to include that stuff if it's really necessary to describing something new that's happened in the story. I'm gonna probably not have every single Clancy letter in here because it's just a lot, but that's all right. Think of this as a basic introduction into the lore. If you want the full story, you got to watch a few 2-hour plus long YouTube videos. I'm gonna miss some shit because it's 8 years of lore. It's 9 years at this point. I don't know, when did it start? No, it's been 8 years. I don't know. But anyways, before we get really deep into it, we're gonna start with just a quick overview of every album and how it kind of relates to the lore. So Blurryface, that was a 2015 album. Maybe a lot of you know this album because it is the most popular 21 Pilots album. This has elements of the lore. It's kind of the soft beginning. The character Blurryface is kind of the introduction to everything. The music videos and the songs, with the exception of one of them, doesn't really fully connect to the lore. We don't even know that there's lore at this point. At this point, it's just a cool concept album. Okay, Trench. So this was the explicit beginning and introduction to the world, the story. It's the Rebellion album. It's kind of we're rebelling against the bad guys album. And I'll get more specific, obviously, but this is just kind of a quick overview. Okay, Scaled and Icy. So this album is where the story kind of takes a crazy twist. Clancy, who is the protagonist, gets kidnapped and is forced to make art, which ends up being this album. This whole entire album is propaganda. Next up, Clancy. This is the album Clancy. So Clancy, the person, deals with depression rebound, and the big battle happens in this album. And then going into this next album that's coming out in September, I think September 12th is the date, Clancy has betrayed the rebellion, ? What's going on? We don't quite know exactly what's going to happen in this album yet because it hasn't come out yet, but that seems to be where things are pointing, which is kind of crazy. So anyways, we're starting at the beginning. We're starting with Blurryface. So the first question that everyone should maybe have on their minds is, what's a Blurryface?
What's a Blurryface?
You shut the fuck up, get your teeth straight!
Okay, so that so that I don't this slide doesn't I just put it in just for fun. Okay. Blurryface. So Blurryface is actually a character that represents Tyler's insecurities. Each song or dot on the album is like a different insecurity. This will matter later, but you don't have to like memorize what each of them mean. It's just know that these all represent something different. And then that's him. That's kind of what he looks like, at least in the Blurryface fairly local music video. So the lore begins. Heavydirtysoul, the music video, comes out in 2017. This was the canon beginning of the lore, but at the time nobody really knew that this was the beginning. Everyone was just kind of like, okay, this was a cool video, but we didn't know that this was actually something bigger. It starts with Tyler, who's in the backseat of a car being driven by a hooded figure. The car kind of falls apart and explodes eventually. This will just directly link up with the beginning of the Trench Era. Just wait. So it may not make sense right now, but there's a hooded figure that's driving him, and Tyler's in the backseat. He's kind of like out of control right now, but then the car kind of like breaks apart, it explodes, and then he's basically able to escape from this person, and the car burns. Okay, so oh jeez. The hiatus, 2017 to 2018. So if you were a fan of 21 Pilots, you probably remember this era, this year-long hiatus that they took. It wasn't like they officially said, oh, we're going to take a hiatus. It just kind of happened, and everyone just kind of started calling it the hiatus. But basically on their Twitter profile picture, they had an eye that just kind of periodically closed until it was just a white dash and it was just nothing. So after the eye closing on social media, 21 Pilots went radio silent for a whole year. And again, this was a really painful time to exist in. However, before they actually came back with any new music, there was this cryptic ass website that that people found. The way that people found this was kind of insane. So basically DMAorg info, DMAorg.info, by layering like 2 frames of a GIF that was on the 21 Pilots like vessel store page, by layering them on top of each other, they basically were able to find the link, and then they were able to find all of these letters that were on the website with just a bunch of cryptic stuff, like a bunch of letters signed by Clancy, and just this GIF of like a vulture turning its head. Just a bunch of random stuff, a bunch of stuff that we're just like, what the hell is going on? This is like weird and cryptic and scary. But from this, there's actually a few things that we can kind of piece together. So from this website, we can piece together a few things. Dema is a city controlled by 9 bishops, which are the 9 dots, if you remember from Blurryface. It's like 9 different insecurities. Each bishop represents a different song from Blurryface. And there's 9 towers. Each bishop gets a tower. Dema is described as a very dull and uninspiring city. However, it's something that's described a lot of the times as being comfortable and routine-based. And that's really important and kind of like a big thing about the lore. The practicing religion is Vialism. I'll get into what that means later, but just keep that in mind. The banditos, who are the rebels, believe that the bishops are abusing their power and control to hurt the citizens. And it's a lot deeper than that, but again, we'll get more into that. This is just what we could kind of piece together just from what we had at the time. But just to kind of give away the story, the allegory and everything, Dema is supposed to be an allegory for being trapped in depression. The bishops, so this is just a picture of what the bishops look like. There's 9 bishops. Every citizen gets assigned to a bishop. There's only like 2 really important ones, though, that you need to keep in mind. There's Nico, who is Blurryface. Nico is Blurryface. Because again, like I said, Blurryface was never really intended to be a part of like the lore. It was more like a kind of, he was thinking about the lore at the time of making Blurryface, but he didn't really like go fully into it. But Nico is Blurryface now. That's just kind of confirmed. Who's the leader of the bishops. And then there's Keons, who is technically Clancy's bishop, but it gets a little complicated. We'll get more into it. But just those are the only 2 that are really important that you need to know by name. Okay, so what is Trench? So those who have escaped Dema, we can actually see a good picture of it right here. This is the city of Dema. This is the area outside of Dema. This is the continent of Trench. So those who have escaped Dema have made it to the continent of Trench. Trench is a musty, cold, and scary environment that is out of Dema's control. It's not comfortable like Dema, but it's better than being in the city because you have more control in this area. You can like actually be yourself here, basically. So Trench is kind of like an allegory for like trying to fight back against the depression that you may have, because it may feel uncomfortable. It may be not what you're used to. You may be like kind of, I guess, overwhelmed by the decisions that you can make, but it's a good place to be in. And it's not necessarily the final destination, like the final place that you need to be in. It's just the uncomfortable place that you kind of need to be in to address your illness. That's kind of what Trench is supposed to embody. I think Tyler has talked about Trench in the sense of like it being like a car, because you're not quite at the place that you need to be. You're not at your destination, but it's better than being where you were, kind of. It's the place in between. Okay, so now finally we get new music. After a year of nothing, we finally get more music, and this was like the happiest day of my life. I still remember this, July 11th, 2018. I was so happy. I woke up in the morning and I saw that they posted 2 videos, because they posted this and Nico and the Niners on the same morning. And I listened to this and I was just blown away. I was like, dude, they've done it again. They've made some incredible music. But it was also like, it was such a big deal for me because I had already listened to, like, this was the first new album from 21 Pilots that I had ever heard, because Blurryface was already out by the time that I listened to it. So this was just such a big deal for me. I was like, you ask anyone that was important in my life at that time, they will tell you, like, I was obsessed with this. And I have been since then. Anyways, okay, so Tyler or Clancy. So I'm going to make this very clear. Tyler is Clancy. Clancy is Tyler. They're kind of the same. It's a little confusing because at the time we thought they were different people. However, there's stuff that comes out later that implies that they are definitely the same person. There is some theories that imply that they are still different people, but just for the sake of like making this something that is, I guess, quote unquote canon to the lore as of right now, we're just going to assume that Tyler and Clancy are the same person. And it also just makes it easier for describing a lot of things that happen. So if you hear me say Tyler, I mean Clancy. If you hear me say Clancy, I'm talking about Tyler. So anyways, Clancy stands on top of the Heavydirtysoul car that was in the music video. Clancy has tricked Nico, who is Tyler's bishop, to take him outside of Dema. So Tyler explores Trench, and then Nico arrives on a horse to like take him back to Dema. But upon seeing the banditos, Tyler gets the courage to escape, but he's ultimately captured by Nico. So essentially this whole music video is just like Tyler exploring the area and then Nico showing up. He's kind of like trying to get him to come back. For a second, it looks like he's going to actually come back and, you know, give up this exploration that he's doing. But then he tries to escape again, and then Nico captures him again. So then next up in the story, we have the Nico and the Niners music video. After his failed escape attempt, Tyler resumes his life in Dema. The bishops do this like weird ritualistic thing in front of the neon gravestones, which we'll get into more of what that means later. It ties into their religion. And with the help of Josh, who is Torchbearer, and we're going to get into who Torchbearer is like later, like probably like, I don't know, 30 slides from now, because he's not like all that important just yet, but he becomes really important later on. So just keep that in mind. Josh is Torchbearer. But with the help of Josh, Tyler is able to escape again. Clancy is kind of starting a rebellion within Dema that questions the bishop's authority. So you can see like these 2 kids right here that are like looking at the jumpsuit that's left over by Tyler and are just kind of wondering, like, it's their first idea of like, wait, we can fight back against the bishops. I didn't think of that. So then the next music video is Levitate. So Tyler escapes Dema with the banditos to the bandito hideout in Trench. He shaves his head again and chills with Clifford the Vultured. And then Nico captures Tyler again and takes him back to Dema. And it's important to know that like when Tyler is captured, similar to how he was captured in Jumpsuit, he doesn't really like protest. He just kind of accepts the fact that like, okay, I'm being captured. It is what it is. Because he's kind of like okay with it. And it kind of ties back into how like being in Dema is still comfortable. So he's kind of okay with going back, even though he knows it's not good for him. Okay, so now we've gone over all of the music videos for Trench. Now we're going to talk about the album for a little bit. Trench releases on October 5th, 2018. Now, I want to say we're going to have to get into some topics that are a little bit uncomfortable to talk about. So specifically, we're going to be talking about suicide, which can be a very triggering topic. But just please know that there is always help out there. I'm going to be leaving some links in the description. Okay, so just talking about my opinion real quick, I think that this is the best 21 Pilots album by far. Actually, maybe not by far. Self-Titled is a really good one too. But this one is just like, it's everything that I think really made 21 Pilots so good, but then they just made it better. Like the songwriting is better. The production is better. Like the production jump from Blurryface to Trench is kind of insane when you listen to it. Like it's just so much better. And that's not to say that Blurryface was bad, but like this is just like, I was blown away listening to this. It felt like they genuinely had really grown a lot in just this like 3-year stretch. The overall theme of Trench is kind of about having the courage to fight back against mental illness and not letting it take you over. It also talks about glorifying suicide and how that is bad. It highlights that this process can be draining and painful, but it is good for you to grow. So kind of talking more about like the lore aspect of it, Dema being like this place of depression, it can be a very comfortable environment. It can be an environment that's like it's very routine based. You're very used to it, similar to how kind of like being stuck in depression can feel like. But when you're in Trench, it's going to be more uncomfortable. It's going to be a lot more like cold and the weather's going to be unpredictable. You're going to feel a little bit out of control, but it's going to be a lot better for you and going to help you grow a lot. And that's kind of what this whole album is talking about. The main thing that you can kind of take away from this album, one of the biggest themes from it, and honestly just one of the biggest themes I think in all of 21 Pilots' music, is that having people with you makes this process less painful, makes the process of going to Trench, going to this uncomfortable environment that you know is good for you, it's going to make the process less painful and it's going to make it easier. Not completely easy, but it's going to make it easier. And so here are some lyrics that kind of like back this up. So we actually find out at the end of this album that in time I will leave the city, for now I will stay alive. That's the last song on the album. So we actually find out that he doesn't even make it out of the city in the end. He is still in Dema. But he's at least making this promise that he will one day leave. He knows that he needs to, but right now he kind of just needs to deal with everything that he's dealing with right now. Even this verse from Leave the City, I feel like it kind of talks specifically about themes that we see a lot coming up like in the next couple albums. Not Scaled and Icy so much, but more like Clancy. So he basically goes, I'm tired of tending to this fire. I've used up all I've collected. I've singed my hands. So like he's just burnt out. He's really tired from fighting. But then he goes on to say, it's glowing embers barely showing proof of life in the shadows dancing on my plans. So it's like, as long as there are people out there who are like seeing this, who are internalizing this, then maybe it is all worth it. Maybe it is like worth continuing.
Meaning that like it's worth continuing for Tyler to fight back against his mental illness, but also from a lore perspective for Clancy to keep fighting against the bishops, because it's inspiring a lot of people who maybe would have not wanted to fight back against the bishops to actually question their authority and fight back.
Neon Gravestones, we're going to talk all about that song in just a second, but this song is specifically about the dangers of glorifying suicide and about the religion of Vialism. What's important to note, though, is that in Trench, fire is used a lot to describe like pure like passion, like physical fire. We see it a lot in the music videos with the banditos having like actual torches, but the bishops are always going to have like neon lights. They're going to have neon like fixtures up because the entire city is lit by neon. And it's kind of this idea that like neon is like a fake version of light. So neon is basically like a fake version of what you would get when you actually feel something accomplishing that you've done in your life. Basically, glorifying suicide would be like you're glorifying something that in your mind you think it's a good thing, but it's really a bad thing. But anyways, this verse right here from Bandito, I'm just gonna stick to it really quickly because I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but this verse specifically means so much to me. It's like one of my favorite verses in all of songwriting, like ever. It is so beautiful. So he says, in city, I feel my spirit is contained like neon inside the glass they form my brain. So he feels okay when he's in Dema. He feels that there is something there to being there. Like it's almost like they're luring him with the neon. But then he says, but I recently discovered it's a heatless fire, specifically talking about neon, like nicknames they give themselves to uninspire. So he basically realized that maybe everything that the bishops are teaching me, maybe everything that depression is telling me is not a good thing. It's actually a bad thing, and they're doing it for nefarious reasons. And then he goes on to talk about like ways that he can actually better himself, like begin with bullet, now add fire to the proof. I'm still not sure if fear's a rival or close relative to truth. So he's not quite sure about everything yet, but he's getting through it. And either way, it helps to hear these words bounce off of you. The softest echo could be enough for me to make it through, which is again, talking about like having people there with you makes the process less painful. So anyways, we'll get more into the actual lore now, but that was just kind of like a conceptual version of what's going on here. Vialism. So again, we're going to talk about suicide. This is mainly where we're going to leave it, because we're going to talk about Vialism, which is the religion. that talks specifically about neon gravestones and what it means, and we kind of have to talk about it to really understand what it is. So through various interviews, Clancy letters from the DMAorg website, and the lyrics of Neon Gravestones, we can understand the religion of Dema. With the conditions of Dema being dull, isolating, and devoid of life, the bishops are able to encourage a religion with an end goal of getting the citizens to kill themselves, which is kind of crazy, kind of insane, but it all makes sense when we talk more about it. So the bishops glorify the act as a righteous and brave thing that serves the city because they will be given a neon gravestone that will help illuminate the city.
Which are these little glowing rectangles that surround the city.
It's kind of seen as like, hey, you're suffering a lot. This is the answer to your suffering, which is obviously by all means like not true at all. But in like obviously in with Dema being the villains, they would encourage that. But the main thing here is that like they are given a neon gravestone that helps illuminate the city. So it's kind of seen as like you're benefiting the city. You're helping everyone else out by doing this. But the dark secret about Vialism is that the bishops encourage suicide so that they can use the quote glorious gods, which are basically the dead bodies of the people who have committed Vialism, to make themselves immortal. Which we'll get more into what that means later. It's at the moment, we didn't even know any of this, so it was just kind of we were given Vialism, but we didn't know this last part. But I'm just putting that there right now because we'll learn more about that later. The assemblage of the glorified is a final celebration or party for those who have decided to become glorious gods, and we'll actually get to see one of these parties play out in a music video later. But this is why the Bandidos started the rebellion in the first place, because they discovered this and they were like, hey, this is terrible, this is awful, we need to do something about this. Okay. So now we're done with the trench era. Clancy is dead? ? So, okay, we're going to fast forward to early 2021. The DMAorg website has been taken over by Dema. The website now promotes a new live stream, a new album or live stream experience. So basically we get this like account terminated page when we go to the DMAorg website. Everything's been wiped from the website except for this. But if you click, I forgot what number it was. There was like some number right here where if you click it, you get to see this image of the 21 Pilots live stream experience, the new album Skilled and Icy, and the live stream experience. It all happens May 21st. So this was really weird to be living through because I was like, wait, is this an album announcement? I'm so confused what's happening right now. But basically the new album it was announced right here. Obviously it's called Skilled and Icy, which is an anagram for Clancy is dead. If you rearrange the letters, it spells out Clancy is dead. I remember hearing the name Skilled and Icy. I was like, what the hell? What does that mean? But once I started learning about this, I was like, oh, this makes sense. Also, these numbers right here in the infraction code, if you put the numbers to like the alphabetical order that they would be in, it spells out Clancy is dead. So like 3 is C, 12 is L, A is 1. It spells out Clancy is dead. So they're really trying to push this idea that like, hey, Clancy's dead. We possibly killed him. However, it's important noting that Skilled and Icy is actually propaganda. So earlier, this is completely not lore related at all, but 21 Pilots released a Christmas song like a few months before announcing this album called Christmas Saves the Year. And the art of the song revealed this. If you zoom in, there's a present from Clancy that says Skilled and Icy is propaganda. Now, I don't know how people found this. I don't know, like, people must have just were zooming into the picture and stuff. I don't know. So Clancy is not actually dead. The bishops are basically just trying to squash the rebellion that Clancy created with this intimidating message. That's why they're trying to put around everywhere that, hey, we killed Clancy, Clancy's dead. Clancy has instead been captured and forced to create this album that pushes Dema propaganda. Also, a really, really cool detail that I think has just, like, it's something that when I found this out, I was like, wait, they are actually geniuses for this. The album art of the Trash the Dragon right here is actually inspired by Walter Crane's dragon art, which you can see right here. And Walter Crane was actually a propaganda artist from the 1800s. So this idea that we're being pushed two things. We're being pushed that Clancy is dead, but we also know that that's actually a lie because Skilled and Icy is propaganda. And we've been presented this just from images and like, that's basically it. It's just, I don't know. It's really cool how they were able to present all this. The 21 Pilots live stream experience. This was a real live stream concert that happened on May 21st, 2021 due to COVID. This show was created by Dema to promote Vialism, using Clancy as the star of the show. During the 2-hour show, which this was a really cool show. If you are able to find it on the internet. They've kind of wiped it from the internet because it was like a pay-per-view type of thing. But I was able to watch it like one time, and I was kind of blown away by it because it was genuinely like a really awesome thing. But during the 2-hour show, Tyler, Josh, and all of the participants just look like they don't really want to be there. There's also these hosts here that are like slowly deteriorating through the performance, which we'll get into more of what that is later, that it means something, we just didn't know what it meant at the time. Tyler attempts to play Car Radio, but he's then stopped by the Bishops and forced to play Never Take It, which in my opinion is kind of like the ultimate propaganda song from this album. And we'll get into what it actually means in a second. But just know that like there was like an alarm that played once he was playing Car Radio, and he was just kind of stopped, forced to play Never Take It instead. So there's a lot of like control going on with Dema, with the Bishops. So this album came out in 2021, May 21st, 2021. Because this album is propaganda, the album is more of like a basic pop album than what's expected from 21 Pilots. There was like a lot of discourse on this album when it came out. A lot of people really didn't like it. I think it's good. I think it's like they're still able to make good pop music in my opinion. However, I would be lying. I think all 21 Pilots fans would be lying if they said that this was their favorite album. I don't think it's anyone's favorite 21 Pilots album. But it's an album, and it's a decent one. Honestly, there's some bangers on there. Like if I'm in a good mood and I just want to listen to a happy song, then I'll put on some music from this. The lyrics of this album are like kind of a bit less explicit about the lore, but the lore still does exist in this album. And it kind of focuses more on like embracing the mainstream, which is something that they tend to be against. There are specific songs that do warn Dema citizens against the Clancy Rebellion, which we can see right here. From Never Take It, we have this song that's really just about like not believing in the Clancy Rebellion. I keep calling it the Clancy Rebellion because that's kind of what it's seen as at this point, because all of the letters that are being passed around are signed off as Clancy. But it says keep the truth in quotations because they keep lying through their fake teeth. They're trying hard to weaponize you and I will never take it. So kind of like they're trying to divide us. They're trying to start this revolution, but we're not going to believe it. There's also this song, which is No Chances. And this song was actually, I think it's one of the best on the album. It warns people specifically about like escaping Dema. It says, we've got people on the way. We want you home in one piece now. We get bodies every day. We want you home in one piece now. So basically it could mean like two things, which I think is really interesting. It could be like, hey, we get bodies every day. Like we kill people every day. So if you're out there, we're going to kill you. Or it could mean like, we see people out there who have died every day and we just want you home in one piece now. We want you to be safe, which I think is kind of a more evil way of looking at it. That's kind of how I interpreted it at first. Another thing to really keep in mind, like, I feel like this album tried really hard to be the complete antithesis of like everything that 21 Pilots was. So even something as simple as like Tyler and Josh, like Josh being on the right, Tyler being on the left. If you look at literally any other promotional picture of these two people, Tyler is always on the right, Josh is always on the left. But for this one album, they were like, no, we're going to switch it up a little bit because they were trying so hard to basically like show that, hey, this is a propaganda album. This is not us, basically, is what they're trying to get at. And I think it's just, I don't know. I feel like in hindsight, looking back at this album, it's so clever. We couldn't really appreciate everything that was done in this album until Clancy came out, because that was when things started like changing with the lore. Okay, moving on to the Saturday music video. We're now getting into the music video where we get to see the annual assemblage of the Glorified, which is about Vialism. So Tyler and Josh, who are still under the Bishop's control, have to perform the song Saturday at the annual assemblage of the Glorified. So the party takes place in this like boat or submarine thing right here. And it takes place in the ocean near Dema. So remember the map that I showed you where it's got like the continent of Trench and Dema? It's going to be taking place in the ocean that's nearby Dema. So near the end of the video, Trash the Dragon, which is the dragon that's like on the album art, with glowing yellow eyes swimming in the water, crashes into the submarine, flooding the party. Tyler and Josh are able to swim up to the surface and basically escape. They're out of Dema's control now. That's the main thing that has come out from this song. Okay, so now we're going to get into the outside music video. Holy shit. This music video is insane. It is the most lore-heavy video. This was like, when this came out, it was kind of like information overload, it felt like. I remember being confused at this, and I felt like I was following the lore pretty well, but I was like, what the hell's going on? There's just too much happening right now. So before we really get into this music video, there's some things that we need to talk about that got revealed on the DMAorg website. Before the events of this video, these two images were posted to DMAorg, which is now back in Clancy's control. Voltsoy, which is, I think it translates to the Island of Violence, is an island just off of the continent of Trench. You can see it right here in this picture of this map that was posted. So using these antlers right here in this picture, you're basically able to seize an available vessel or take control of a dead body, which is a power known as psychokinesis. And that may seem like weird and confusing to bring up now, but this is the reason why the bishops want citizens to practice Vialism. They want dead bodies so that they can basically take control of them with the antlers. This is also why the hosts during the live stream experience looked dead. It's because they literally were dead and they were being controlled by the bishops. They had the glowing yellow eyes. Usually when they have glowing yellow eyes, that means that they are being seized at the moment. They were being seized by the bishops. They were under mind control. It's implied in a later Clancy letter that Clancy is an anomaly. He can be seized while alive, which is, it kind of, in my opinion at least, ties into the idea of like him even making the propaganda, because something that I've always wondered is like, why did he even willingly make this propaganda album? But it kind of makes sense when you look at it as like, they wanted him so that they can take control of his body and use him to make propaganda. Also, this is the point where Clancy is officially retconned as Tyler. So like I mentioned earlier, the identity of Clancy and Tyler it was kind of weird. At the beginning, people thought that they were different people, but it was at this moment where it was kind of like confirmed for sure that Tyler and Clancy are the same person. There was a letter that came out during the Trench era that described the events of the Jumpsuit music video, but from the perspective of someone who was like kind of watching from a distance, but it was signed off as Clancy. So that's why people thought that Tyler and Clancy were like two different people, but it's now been retconned as like that was like a quote unquote out of body experience. And it's kind of being like explained as because he was like being seized when Nico put his hands over his neck, which is like smearing. Basically, he put his hands on his neck and it kind of like created like an entryway into being able to be seized. And that's kind of what the out of body experience was. Basically, all that to say that Tyler and Clancy are the same person. We kind of already knew that, but I just wanted to make that clear here. Okay, let's get into this music video. So Keons, who is Clancy's bishop, is revealed to have seized Trash the Dragon in the Saturday music video. Notice the glowing yellow eyes. Like I said, if there's glowing yellow eyes, then that usually means that they're being seized at the moment. Keons was actually taking control of Trash the Dragon, who was dead, and crashed it into the submarine, which made them escape. This means that he was responsible for Clancy escaping. Due to his betrayal, the other 8 bishops stabbed Keons to death. They just kill him. It's kind of insane. So that's how the video starts. We haven't even gotten to the music part of the music video, but that's how it started. It was kind of insane. Clancy washes up on the island of Voltsoy immediately after the events of Saturday. Josh is there already, and he like leads him into a cave. In this cave, Clancy finds a group of Neds around a fireplace. So Ned is a creature that was in the Chlorine music video. He was this little guy right here. I think he's supposed to represent like creativity or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure. But the Chlorine music video was not canon to the lore. So seeing like all of these Neds like in the lore now was kind of like weird, because it's like, wait, so Ned is now a part of the lore? Now there's just a bunch of Neds. They're just these cute little creatures. It's nothing crazy. They're just cute little creatures. One of the Neds actually has their antlers grown out. You can see most of the Neds don't have their antlers grown out, but one of them actually did have them grown out, and they gave the antlers to Clancy. And remember, the antlers are the things that give the ability of seizing. When you put them over your head, you get the ability to seize dead bodies. So Clancy decides to use this ability, and he uses the psychokinesis ability to basically take over Keons, who like had just died, and he destroys the neon lights that are like placed around him because they were kind of in the process of like creating his gravestone. But what's important to kind of mention is that when Keons did die, he made the horns available for Clancy to even get, which makes me believe that Keons actually did this on purpose. Like the entire thing, not just he intended to be killed so that there would be new antlers available that Clancy could use. So you may be wondering like why Keons actually did all this, and that's still something that I do wonder, but it's explained at least a little bit by the fact that the bishops are described like during like the early Trench era when we just had like the letters. The bishops are described as like, they do have like a personal relationship with all the citizens that are assigned to them. So it's kind of thought that like Keon's just felt really sympathetic for Clancy for the situation that he was in, so he wanted to help him out. So destroying the neon gravestone kind of creates like a neon fire within Dema. Clancy and Josh are able to head to the shore and like hold up their torches to Trench and see that there are still multiple banditos on the other side on Trench who are like there with him through the rebellion. Basically, like confirming that like despite Dema's propaganda efforts, the rebellion is still stronger than ever. Those two kids that were in the Nico and the Niners music video have now left Dema and are a part of the rebellion. So this is kind of like where we end the propaganda era, but despite that, like the propaganda era didn't really do much. If anything, it like fueled the rebellion. Okay, like I said, we're moving on from the Scaled and Icy era. We're now moving on to the next era, which is the Clancy era. On February 22nd, 2024, this video gets released by 21 Pilots on YouTube. I am Clancy. Now, you can watch this video, and honestly, if you're confused up to this point, I would highly recommend that you watch this video. It's only 4 minutes long, and it really just goes over like everything that I've described so far, but just in 4 minutes. It not as detailed as this, but it just kind of goes over like all of the music videos, where Clancy is currently, what he's thinking, what he's doing after like this whole propaganda thing that went down. The video goes over Clancy's escape journey from Heavydirtysoul to the outside. Tyler makes the bold proclamation of "I am heading back to Trench and I am Clancy." It's then revealed that in 1 week, the first song of the new album, Clancy, would release. It's really important noting that this was kind of a really big deal when it happened because Tyler never like specifically talked about the lore up to this point. Like there's maybe a few interviews that you can point to where he did like open up a little bit about the lore. He really liked to keep it under wraps. So the fact that he made a YouTube video where he literally is just talking about the lore is like kind of crazy. But it's also worth noting that Clancy was set to be the conclusion of the story. Quote unquote conclusion. We'll get more into that later. So, Overcompensate. 1 week later, Overcompensate releases. Inside Dema, Clancy is there, and he's there to educate the citizens about the oppressive structure that they live within. This is kind of a big deal because up to this point, besides like the very brief thing that happened during Nico and the Niners, the rebellion has only existed outside of the walls of Dema. But now we have Clancy actually coming into Dema to like educate the citizens. He's like up in front of like a projector screen and he's like showing all of the like basically all of the letters that we've seen on the DMAorg website. So that was actually kind of fun to see like in a music video. But at the end of the video, Clancy like falls to the ground, and when the citizens go up and remove his mask, they find out that it's actually someone else who was behind the mask. It wasn't Clancy at all. We then cut to Clancy, who's still on the island of Voltsoy with the antlers above his head. So like he had just gotten done seizing just this random dead citizen so that he can kind of go in there and educate the people from within. Now, it's important noting that this is kind of like ringing a little bit of alarm bells because it's like, wait, why are we now like doing the same thing as the bishops? Like, at least when I saw this, that's what I was thinking. I was like, are we just like cool with just using the powers of the bishops, but like to our advantage? Wasn't the whole point of this that we don't want the bishops to like be doing this in the first place? So there's a lot of questions that kind of arise from this. And we kind of start to see Clancy being a lot more of a bold and aggressive figure in this album and just in these videos in general. Okay, so remember how I said that we were going to talk about Josh? We're now going to talk about Josh. It took like 2 whole albums to go through, but we're finally going to talk about Torchbearer, who is Josh. And he's actually like the leader of the Banditos. So Torchbearer actually has the ability to project himself into people's visions to guide them away from Dema. So basically, he's essentially just trying to like be with you at all times so that your number one goal is to get out of Dema. He's the torchbearer. He's the one with the torch trying to guide you out. He's not super important to the story until now, when we have the Navigating music video, which came out on the same day as the album came out. So in this video, it happens right after the Overcompensate music video. Clancy and Josh, with other banditos, walk through the island of Voltsoy to reach this giant fiery inferno. The entire music video is honestly just them walking. There's not a whole lot that really happens here. So once they finally arrive, Torchbearer, who's dressed the same as he was during the Trench era, like actual Torchbearer, appears. And then Josh, who is just kind of like with him and not dressed like that, he disappears. So it's kind of like the big reveal that since the events of Scaled and Icy, Clancy has been alone. Torchbearer was simply just projecting himself there to slowly guide him away from Dema, and also just to kind of keep him company. But it's honestly kind of sad because it really shows that like he was alone like this whole time. But it's at least kind of comforting knowing that like Torchbearer was trying to help him through all this. We then get to rewatch scenes from this video where Josh is like cut out, implying that he was never actually there. So that's basically what this whole music video is. Not a whole lot happens. It's a lot of walking, but basically Josh is not real. They made it canon to the lore, which is kind of crazy. Clancy releases May 24th, 2024. This album is seen by a lot of people as like a return to form. It's similar to Blurryface and Trench in like the themes that are talked about, but also just in the music. Like it's not much of a pop album. It's more of like what you're used to with 21 Pilots. What I think is really interesting, at least from my perspective, when this album came out, I was really expecting this just from everything that was being built up to it, that this was going to be like Clancy's going to declare war against the bishops. There's going to be a big battle. And that does happen in the later music video. We'll get to that. But the album like lyrics are a lot more about the personal struggles that Clancy is going through, which I think is really interesting. It's kind of like a crazy misdirection that happened. There's themes of addiction, sliding back into depression, and just kind of the cycle that comes with like escaping Dema and then being caught and then escaping Dema again and then being caught again. And this idea that Clancy is just kind of going through an endless cycle where he feels like he's getting better, but then something happens and now he's depressed again. It talks a lot about that and just the struggles of going through all of that. I think, honestly, this album is quite brave of Tyler, and I love and connect to the themes of this album so much. Like I feel like with every new 21 Pilots album that's come out, like in my lifetime, well, I mean, I say in my lifetime, like since I've started listening to them, every new album that's come out has found like a really interesting way to relate to me personally. And this album really hit home with that because it is kind of just about like feeling like you figured it out, feeling like you've gotten to the place that you want to be at, but then you're not quite there. You realize that you're not quite there. You get caught back into these thoughts of like depression and anxiety and just everything that's kind of going on. It's just, I don't know. It's just such a beautiful way to direct this album, because to me, it's kind of seen as like, hey, everyone wants me to like do this battle. They want me to fight Dema. They want me to do this thing. But like, personally, I am not doing well is kind of what this album felt like. Like Clancy was just saying, I'm not there yet. Like I am depressed. So here's a bunch of lyrics that I have on screen that kind of talk about this. Vignette is kind of about like struggling with addiction. You're trying so hard not to, but you keep being swallowed by this thing that's taking over you. It's not necessarily in your control. It's just happening. That's how the song is kind of laid out. Next Semester is actually about a suicide attempt. It's actually a really sad song, but it's a really like upbeat, happy song, but it's a really sad song. You then have Snapback, which is kind of directly about feeling like you can't snap back into feeling like you're okay again. You feel like you've hit a wall and you can't quite recover from it. It talks about depression being like a new adaptation. Like you felt like you got over at one point, but now it's kind of adapted into this new thing that you're dealing with. A main thing that kind of like is lore related, I feel like, is this lyric right here. I used to be the champion of a world you can't see. Now I'm drowning in logistics, which is from Backslide. And I feel like what that lyric means, at least to me, how I interpret it, is that it feels like Clancy he's been trying so hard to like deal with this rebellion, like because he's kind of seen as like the face of it, but he himself can't even really get over the stuff that he's dealing with. So it's kind of like, how can you really expect to empower others when you yourself are like broken? I don't know. That's just kind of how I interpreted it. I know there's a bunch of ways that you can interpret it. It'll make sense as we go into Breach, which is coming up soon. Before we get into that, Paladin Strait, which is the last song on Clancy, we're going to go into like what the song actually means before we get into the music video, because this is kind of like a really this is like the biggest music video of all time. It was kind of insane when it came out. So Paladin Strait is about having the courage to do this really big thing as long as you know that there are people that are going to be there that are going to be by your side. Paladin Strait is like the body of water between Voldsoy and Dema. The lyrics talk about wanting to swim the Paladin Strait without any flotation, And as long as you can see a glimpse of just someone on the other shoreline, then you know that maybe you're going to make it. Maybe you can make it through doing this big, scary thing. And just kind of emphasizes the theme that we've already talked about of like how having people on the other side rooting you on can really be enough hope to like get through whatever you're going through. But then the song ends abruptly with these lyrics. On the ground are banditos fighting while I find Nico, even though I'm past the point of no return. Climb the top of the tower, show yourself, I yell louder, even though I'm past the point of no return. And then Clancy gets cut off, and Nico, or Blurryface, like in the Blurryface voice that we hear like in Fairly Local, says these lyrics, which are from Fairly Local. So few, so proud, so emotional, hello Clancy. And that's how the album ends. It just ends like that. So a lot of people were like, wait, I thought this was the conclusion to the lore. Why am I left with more questions? But we're going to get into that in a second, because the Paladin Strait music video came out, I want to say like a month after the album came out. Yeah, it was like a month after the album came out. This video is built like a fucking Marvel movie. It is low-key the greatest music video of all time. I still remember when this came out, I was glued to my screen. I could not stop. Like, I was just so invested in this, and it was just like, just so shocked too, because I was like, bro, they really went all in with this music video. It's genuinely the greatest music video of all time, in my opinion. So the music video begins with Clancy, Torchbearer, and the Banditos entrenched. They're now entrenched. They're not on Voltsoy anymore. And they're preparing for a battle against the bishops. Clancy makes sure to bring the antlers, and they head towards Dema. The bishops watch them by seizing the dead vultures, because the vultures have like the glowing yellow eyes, and then it cuts to them seizing them with the glowing yellow eyes. So they're basically stalking them. They know that they're coming. So when they arrive to Dema, the bishops begin seizing the dead bodies from the neon gravestones, because the neon gravestones are placed like in a circle around the entire city. So they just start seizing all of the Glorious Gons. Now there's this big Avengers Endgame battle that's going on between the Banditos and the Glorious Gons. This was so insane seeing for the first time. I was like shocked at what was happening on my screen. So as all of that's going on, Clancy runs into the city and he climbs the tower that the bishops are in. And then once Clancy enters the tower, he knocks out the first 7 bishops with the antlers, which have telekinesis too. I think because it's called psychokinesis, they have telekinetic powers as well. He basically just kills them all, or knocks them out at the very least. We don't know if they're actually dead yet. I guess we'll find out. As the bishops fall to the ground, the Glorious Gons also fall to the ground, because it's kind of like the source of what was controlling them is now dead. So all of the Glorious Gons just die too. Then, like at the very end, Nico just abruptly appears through the door and puts Clancy into a chokehold. And he's like getting ready to smear him again, kind of like what we saw in the Jumpsuit music video. Okay, so for a second, it kind of looks like Clancy is going to give in to Nico and fall back into this like cycle of depression. Like he's going to willingly accept being taken back into Dema and having this whole rebellion, this whole thing that he'd worked so hard for, stop and basically cause a relapse in his depression, which is something that we know from the lyrics he's really scared of happening. But then Nico says the final part of the song, so few, so proud, so emotional, hello Clancy. Clancy then like regains consciousness, opens his eyes and stares him down, and the video ends. For a while this was seen as like the end of the lore, because that's what Tyler said. He said, oh, this is like the last album, and then this was the last music video that came out. But it was also like, this can't be the end. There's no way that you're ending on what feels like a cliffhanger for something more. But fear not, because the lore did actually end up continuing, but through the Clancy World Tour, which happened from 2024 to 2025. So in this tweet, Tyler actually confirms that the Clancy World Tour is actually just a giant flashback. He says the show is a flashback, like an entire life passing by, reminding us why we fight right before we do. It's a flashback of everything before the Paladin Strait battle. Before each show, there was a tent, which was like the fan premiere exhibit. It was like a tent that was placed outside of a lot of shows. I didn't get to go to the one at my show because, I mean, honestly, if they had announced it when they were like selling the tickets initially, I probably would have gone, but I didn't want to purchase another thing on top of it, but that's whatever. Basically, in this tent, there was like a lot of props from the videos and just other cool stuff from like 21 Pilots history that was just shown off in this tent. And it's also where we get to see more letters, but in physical form. So we got to actually see like IRL Clancy letters. It was kind of insane. The US letters was nothing crazy. Like all of the letters from the US shows were just like the Banditos interaction with each other. It was nothing insane. It was nothing like groundbreaking for the lore. However, things got interesting during the South America and Europe shows. So in this letter, this was a letter, I forgot where this letter was, like where they revealed this one. I think it was in one of the South America shows. I forgot exactly though. But it's a letter from Torchbearer to Clancy. It's a letter that was sent after the events of Paladin Strait, which implies a few things. It implies that Clancy is separated from the Banditos and Torchbearer at the moment because like he's having to write this letter to get to him. But also Torchbearer is concerned that Clancy is losing his way. His position of power is jading him from the group goal of taking down the tyrannical Dema. This letter says right here, never forget the cries of your people. Never forget the raw fear that you... Wait, raw fear, that's the name of a song. It just dawned on me that raw fear is the name of a song from Breach coming up. So, okay, that's crazy. Anyways, never forget the raw fear that fueled you. We destroyed them so that we don't become them. We must do better, Clancy. We must do better. So yeah, this is a scary letter. I remember seeing this and I was like, okay, wait, I think I can kind of see what's going on here. Because like I mentioned during the Overcompensate music video, it feels like Clancy is starting to kind of lose his way. Like he's okay with using the powers of the bishops against the bishops, but it's like, I thought this whole thing was about stopping the bishops in the first place, so why are we doing this? It feels like Clancy has kind of gone rogue and he's trying to do whatever it takes to stop them, which is a little scary. Moving on though, Clancy then responds with this very disturbing letter. So this was from the final show of the tour. It happened like just recently, like just this past May. The main thing that Clancy says to Torchbearer is, "This city needs hope and I alone can give it to them. I will be the example of absolute power. I feel alive again." So I remember seeing this and I was like, oh, this is not good. Something scary is happening right now. But the main thing about this letter is just kind of like noticing the use of like I instead of we. Clancy is very much self-absorbed now. He feels like he is the only one who can really solve this issue. He's very separated from the rebellion at this point. He's saying things such as like the city instead of the people, which is kind of interesting. So it feels like Clancy is losing track of the group goals for his own selfish purposes. What these reasons are unknown, but honestly, the way I kind of interpret it is that I feel like Clancy feels like he's been backed into a corner. The entire album of Clancy is about being caught in this cycle, this never-ending thing. He feels like he hasn't made any progress since like the trench era. And I feel like this is him trying to say, I'm just going to do this myself. I'm going to take it into my own hands. I don't care what anyone thinks.
It's also worth mentioning, and I probably should have said this earlier when we were talking about the Navigating music video, that there was a unreleased track that we got the lyrics to from Clancy that specifically talked about Clancy's disdain for the fact that Josh or Torchbearer was not actually with him during everything that he was going through during Scaled and Icy. And I think that definitely plays into his motivations for wanting to kind of sever ties with the Banditos.
So then there's something that happened at the last concert that we need to talk about. So what usually happens at every concert, this is like even during the US shows like that at this point had happened like over a year or like a little less than a year ago. After they perform all of the songs on the second stage, Torchbearer appears from the crowd and he goes up to Clancy and he gives him this jumpsuit or just this Adidas track jacket, whatever you want to call it. He has it in his hand, he gives it to him and Clancy puts it on. And usually this takes like maybe 2 seconds. It's a very quick interaction. So then they walk back to the main stage and the curtains come down and it reveals Dema. It reveals the whole city and there's them two like facing it down, basically seeing what they need to take down. And it's like, it's one of the coolest parts of the entire show. It's like such an insane, like even the fact that like that's even on the stage at this point because they had like played songs for 15 minutes on the second stage. It was like, wait, what is happening right now? This is crazy. But it happens at literally every show. That it happened at the show that I went to, which was the Oakland show in 2024, which I was literally barricade for B stage. So if you look up any videos of the B stage of this show, specifically of the Oakland show, you will see me in it because I was just right there. And I was freaking out, and it was just one of the greatest nights of my life. It was so much fun. The best concert I've ever been to by far. Okay, so at the UK show, this was the final show that was for the Clancy Tour. This happened like literally 2 months ago at this point. When Josh shows up to give him the jacket, Clancy kind of looks around like he doesn't know like what he's looking at. he doesn't quite directly look at Torchbearer. It's almost like he can't really see him. And this goes on for like almost a whole minute. But then he just walks off stage. He doesn't take the jacket. He just kind of walks off stage. And this was insane because, like I said, this doesn't happen like at any other show. This was a really big moment. He then puts like the little Clancy stole that he has hanging over his neck. He puts it over his eyes as he walks over to the main stage. He doesn't even walk to the main stage. He walks like behind, he walks backstage. And Torchbearer is the only one that actually gets to go up and look at Dema as it's being faced. He still has the jacket in his hand as he's looking down Dema. This was such, like, just seeing the videos of this, it was really concerning. I was like, what's happening? This is scary. I don't know what's happening right now, but it feels like Clancy is, like, betraying the Banditos. It's important noting that the Banditos wore yellow during the Trench era because yellow is a cover that the bishops can't see. This was revealed way back during, like, one of the Clancy letters, like, I think it was the one like right before they actually dropped Jumpsuit. But the fact that like Josh is showing up wearing all yellow and Clancy, he's not even wearing any duct tape at this point. Josh is the only one doing it. So it's like, is Clancy a bishop now? Can he not see yellow? Like what is happening? It's really concerning, honestly, to think about it. For a little bit, we were just left with this and it was kind of seen as like, we're just going to be left on like a cliffhanger with this for a little bit. But that actually only happened for like a few weeks because so after a week of making it seem like they were going to go on another hiatus, it looked like this eye was like about to close and there was going to be another hiatus. I remember seeing this on their social media and I was terrified. I was like, are they about to go on a hiatus for another year or possibly longer? This is scary. And I was honestly accepting that. I was like, maybe it's just going to be another hiatus and we're just going to have to wait to see what happens later. But literally before the eye even gets a chance to close, they then change everything and they decide, no, actually, we're dropping an album. It's called Breach. It's coming out in September. The first song is coming out this June. This was insane because, I mean, they usually take like 3 years between album releases. So this was clearly planned before Clancy even came out. Like they've been planning the end of the lore for so long because it's now confirmed through a Zane Lowe interview. Tyler confirmed like this is for sure going to be the last album. And also Tyler confirmed during that same interview that like this album is going to be about breaching trust. He kind of actually talked about like the fact that Clancy was supposed to be like the last album of the storyline as like this is an example of like him breaching the trust of the fans. And that's kind of what this whole album is about breaching trust. So, okay, the contract came out at this point like a month and a half ago. It's been a little bit. We haven't, as of right now, I'm filming this on July 25th, 2025. The contract is the only song that's come out from this album so far. I would assume we're going to get more songs like sometime soon, like maybe within the next couple of weeks because it's been a little bit. But we're going to go through the song real quick and then we'll go through the music video. But essentially, this song is Clancy is on his own. He wants to fix his internal struggles and he believes that isolating himself is the only way to do it. But with that, it's kind of giving him a lot of sleep deprivation and anxiety. He feels like he's always checking the doors, checking the windows because he feels like the necromancer is outside, which I would assume to be Nico. He's very scared of a relapse, which is something that happened during Clancy, during that album. He's very scared of that happening again, and he's trying to basically do anything it takes to stop that from happening. He attempts to make a deal or a contract with his internal struggles, a deal that he hopefully believes will put an end to his depression for good. He says that here, he says, but now I plead, just take the deal. I promised you a contract. So we don't know actually what necessarily this contract is. Clancy is not necessarily joining the bishops. However, he's definitely not on the Bandito side anymore because he feels like their methods just didn't work for him. In the album Clancy, we see Clancy struggling to hang on to the rebellion because he feels like he's gone into this backslide of going back into this depressive state that he's in. And he's now questioning the authority of the Banditos. And he's been doing so for like the entirety of the album Clancy. We're just now finally seeing the manifestation of it through the contract and probably through the entire album of Reach. We're going to be seeing Clancy just basically questioning the authority of the Banditos and deciding that he himself is the only one who can fix himself. So in conclusion, Clancy is basically trying to fix all his problems on his own. That's basically the main thing you can take away from the contract. The music video starts exactly where Paladin Strait ends, with Nico like smearing Clancy. Clancy then goes into this dream sequence, which is kind of like created by Nico because he was smearing him, where Torchbearer and Clancy perform this song in this like abyss. There's a bunch of figures with red glowing eyes, which are theorized to be like different versions of Clancy that are trying to break the cycle. We see them kind of swirling in a cycle formation at one point. It almost feels like Nico is like taunting Clancy with like, look, these are all the different versions of you that have fallen through this cycle that I've created for you. It's a very villain-esque world that he's been put into. Essentially, Nico is trying to break Clancy by smearing him to force him into a relapse. The video ends with Clancy resisting both Nico and Torchbearer, which I think is really interesting because it implies that the deal that he wants is the deal that he's just going to do on his own, because it implies that he just wants to deal with what he's going through his own way. He doesn't want any help from the bishops. He doesn't want any help from the banditos, because we see Clancy rejects the jacket like we saw during the concert, and then we see him actually open his eyes to like fight back against Nico, which is really interesting. That usually does not happen. So that's where we're left. We're left with the same damn cliffhanger that we were a year ago. And we're still waiting. I mean, honestly, a new music video could literally drop at any time. We just need to like be waiting. The album's coming out on September 12th, so I would assume there's going to be at least 2 more songs that come out before then. But like I said, now you're up to date on the lore. There's more coming soon. Maybe I'll do an update video if I feel really compelled, if I get a lot of people who like this video and want me to do more. So yeah, that's the lore. It's kind of a lot, and it's kind of a lot to process. I feel like I've been recording for an hour and 20 minutes at this point, but there is so much more to it. Like there's a lot that I didn't talk about. There's a lot of letters that I left out because I kind of wanted to treat this as like a narrative thing, not like showing every single thing. I'm going to show you the sources that I use to kind of just what I've used over time to really understand the story, and what you can go to really get a better understanding of the story. There's JL Anderson Music on YouTube, Good Day Dema on YouTube, Casey Levette on YouTube, Stolen Potential on YouTube. So a lot of these people, they do like theory videos, but they also just like, there's videos that they've done. I think Casey specifically has done videos that just go through a giant chunk of the lore. So like everything from like Trench to Clancy, and then everything from Clancy to where we're at right now with Breach. Good Day Dema does like very specific like niche videos, like basically describing entirely what a song, how it relates like to the lore and what it means also. I think they've also done a full video just on like Vialism, like just on the religion Vialism. So just any like term that I've like talked about in this, Good Day Dema probably has a whole entire video talking all about just that. On Twitter, there's Shiloh Felina and Keon Zeese. These are like people that I feel like if there's something that happens like the day that like it happens, I'll go to their Twitters just to see like what people are thinking generally of what's going on. And then obviously the 21 Pilots subreddit and the 21 Pilots like wiki, it has been really helpful because it is like a fan collective thing that's been going on, like that they're able to kind of really help put together what's going on. And then of course the 21 Pilots Discord, you can like go on there and see all of the theories that people have about it. But with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to be leaving all of these links in the description. But with that, I guess we'll see what happens next in the lore. We're almost at the end of it because after Breach, that's it. So I guess we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching. If you want me to make like a video about Breach when it comes out, or just about anything else in the lore, like anything that gets updated, just let me know and I'll be interested in doing it. With that, I'll see you guys.